Hello everyone, I'm Colin Canet. Somebody asked me not long ago, how do you use, or what's the best way of using a reverse glue joint bit? And I've had one for many years, and I haven't used it for a long time, so time to revisit using this. So there's what that reverse glue joint looks like. And basically the way it works, and of course you use it in a router table, what you do, it's pretty simple bit. You run it through and you get a profile, and there's the profile that you'll get. You get one profile on one side, and then you do the same thing. You run another piece of wood through basically the same way, but it's the undercut, and because it's reverse, when you flip it over like that and put the two together, you will get a nice tight fitting joint. So let's go and set this up. Okay, just going to take a moment now, make sure that I unplug the router before I install my bit. And there's my bit. Okay. Plug the router back in. Okay, there we go. There's that bit set up in my router table, and I'm going to be using 3/4 inch material. You can see what that looks like. And what I know is that half of 3/4 is 3/8, so I'm going to be using my 3/8 measuring bar. And what I want to do is I want to take this little part right here, that little tick right at the bottom of my pencil right there, that little line. I want that little edge of that router bit right there. I want that to line up with the top of my measuring bar. There, I think that looks good. All right, let's do a test on that. So before I get started here, I've got some different chunks of material that I'm going to be using, and I've already taken one of them and cut some cutoffs. And because this is a reversible bit, I've got them marked, so one side's going to be up and one side's going to be down. As you can see, I've already installed the bit, and the other thing that I did is I set the carbide in. If you look closely, you can see there's a little bit of a gap here, and in that gap I want that carbide to be absolutely even with the fence. So I very carefully set that. The fence is straight across, and all I'm going to do now is run some tests across there. And when I do that, I'm not going to show you every test because I think this is going to take a little bit of time, but I'm going to be running the strips through there, both up and down, and then comparing them, and I'll cut them off because every time I run a new test strip, I need to cut that test strip off. So I'm going to do that and see where we end up. So there's some of the strips I've been cutting, and I wasn't really happy with them. I kept getting closer and closer, and this one's almost perfect. And after I got this one, and I did one more little tweaking job on the router, and then I had to change material because I ran out of my little strips. But look at what happened. It's got an even worse difference here. So I'm going to have to figure out what happened there and go and correct that. So let's carry on here. So I've discovered my setup has been a little bit challenging, not because the bit is hard to set, but because when I was doing the setups, I discovered when I was using one set of MDF, when I ran out of that doing my tests, or when it got too small, and I went to another side, and all of a sudden the sizes were different, the cuts were different, and then I measured the thickness of what I was using and the new material, and I discovered that there's about a 32nd of a of an inch difference. So this was thicker. And what that translates to, because we're putting two halves together, it doubles that. So then all of a sudden I had a 1/16 of an inch gap when before it was perfectly level. So I'm back to finding some material that is the same thickness. So we're going to run that, and I think this is going to be our final cut. So let's have a look. Now I'm using my lift top router table, but I just want to show you how much I'm moving these things. Like I'm just barely tweaking that, and I don't know if you can even see the movement there, but just a tiny, tiny bit is what I need. So let's try that one. There, I just wanted to change the background here so you could see these a little bit better. And I did coat this one with felt pen just so, again, you can see the difference. But you can see how they line up now. And it's even a nice tight fit all the way along. And they do line up perfectly. And it does take a little bit of work, but you can see that that's a nice straight fit. But what is critical, I've discovered, is that if you're going from material to material, you may have to reset a very, very tiny amount, because I discovered that by accident, that sometimes this material is not exactly perfect, and I'm sure it was purchased perfect, but sometimes this material, and I live in a moist area, and sometimes this material will absorb a little bit of moisture, and that means it can expand a bit. So if this stuff is a little bit older, it may have expanded because it absorbed a little bit of moisture. But anyway, that's what you can expect from that bit. Well, now the question arises, where would you want to be using a reversible glue joint bit? And typically you would be using it on man-made materials, so you'd be using it on MDF or on a plywood. You typically wouldn't use it on a natural wood, and the reason is when you glue, in most cases, when you glue a natural wood to a natural wood, when you try and break that glue joint, it doesn't break. The fibers in the wood will usually tear apart before the glue breaks. That's not always the case when you're using MDF or even when you're using plywood, because plywood, every other ply is edge grain. So if you were applying, for example, a pure, a natural wooden strip to plywood, that would be a time that you might want to have more gluing area so that you get a much better bond. And certainly you would want to use that if you were gluing wood to an MDF material, or such as in my case, you're gluing MDF to MDF, and you might be doing that if you were making countertops or something like that, because that's a perfect material for countertops. And then of course you put some kind of a laminate over top of that. So that's where you would use a reversible glue joint bit. Well, that concludes my video for today, how to use a reversible glue joint bit, and now you know. I'm Colin Cadet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.